Lord God, our Heavenly Father, thank you for gathering us together once again as your people, and once again revealing yourself to us through your word. We ask that you would bless our conversations and our study of your word tonight, that you would continue to reveal yourself to us, and that through our time together, Lord, you would be glorified in all things. So we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so we have been spending our time over the last several weeks just kind of being all over the map, taking a look at different areas, different cities, even following the tribe of Dan for a while. The last 2 weeks we were looking at Bethlehem, all the stuff that took place there. There's a lot of stuff that happens just layered up there in Bethlehem. Tonight, however, we are going to be on the north side of the map here, almost as far north as we can go here. The town up here in the north called Hazor. Hazor is, at least during the Old Testament, a very important city. It seems to lose some prominence in the time between the Testaments. But at least for now, it actually plays a decently large role in the Old Testament narrative leading up to the conquest and during the time of the kings. And we'll see quite a bit of stuff happen there in Hazor, in and around Hazor, maybe we should say. Before we get into Hazor tonight, any leftover questions or comments from the last few weeks? Anything that we've been studying together?
I was going to ask you if I could have a list of those Bible verses for Bethlehem, but then I remembered that I just have to look in the back of my Bible.
Well, there you go. There you go. Yeah. So this is
very interesting. I just love it when this is such a good class.
Yeah. This is the maybe not so well hidden secret of a Bible study like this. A lot of it is just pull up a concordance, and where does the city show up? Now, with tonight's city, Hazor, you run into some issues. There is another Hazor that is down in the hill country here in the tribe of Benjamin. Baal Hazor is sometimes how it's written there. Hazor. Yeah. City of Hazor. And so with some of these, you got to kind of watch out which city are they actually referring to. Sometimes it's the context will tell you. There's a city mentioned in Jeremiah, also named Hazor, that scholars debate. Is it this Hazor? Is it that one? Is it another Hazor that's somewhere further to the east that he's talking about? And lots of people have lots of different opinions. So we do have to kind of pick and choose from that concordance of verses. However, yeah, a lot of them just look up, and we're able to find out where they are, what happens there. And
it lists all the words, and where they were found, so I know I can find it.
Yep. And if you can't find it in the concordance in the back of your Bible, because sometimes they kind of have to shorten things, quick search on the Bible Gateway is the big website. You just search Bethlehem, and it should pull up all the places in the Bible that Bethlehem shows up. Yes, this is true. This is very true. Yeah, lots of really fun ways to go about this. You don't often hear fun in Bible study terms, but I have fun with it at least. So there's that. All right. I guess before we get into Hazor tonight, has anyone even heard of that name before? All right. Yeah, it's one of these cities that important for a few different reasons in the Old Testament, but it's again one of these places that we've kind of discovered as we talk about places on the map that I'm sure you've read the name before.
Yes.
Because you've read through all the passages we're going to read through.
Yes, but it didn't stick out. That's the problem.
Yeah, well, and why would you know the city of Hazor? I mean, we don't know the map. Now, if it's talking about places nearby to us that we would know, whether it's Luther or going up to Mesik or down to McBain, these different local cities we would know. And in a lot of ways, if we lived in this land, we would know a lot of these close by names. Again, this is the same square footage roughly of New Jersey. It's very similar area-wise. Now, I don't have a New Jersey map in my mind, but I've got kind of a West Michigan shape here. The other size reference, Israel would fit within Lake Michigan, area-wise. So again, it's there's a lot of history packed into one little place, is what I'm saying here.
Still going on.
And it is still going on, yes, this is very true. That's its own can of worms. We should just leave off to the side for now. For now, though, we are going to start in the book of Joshua. We're going to hit the end of chapter 10 and into chapter 11. This is, if we're thinking books of the Bible, Joshua is when they start entering the promised land. This is the conquests. They're starting to fight these battles and take over some territory. So Joshua 10, verses 40 through the end of that chapter kind of summarize a campaign that Joshua leads. After he takes Jericho, he goes down to the south, and we'll hear why that's important as we then move on into chapter 11. We've got weird names, so I'll probably read most of at least Joshua tonight. Starting at verse 40. So Joshua struck the whole land, the hill country and the Negev, and the lowland and the slopes and all their kings. He left none remaining, but devoted to destruction all that breathed, just as the Lord God of Israel commanded. And Joshua struck them from Kadesh Barnea as far as Gaza, and all the country of Goshen as far as Gibeon. And Joshua captured all these kings in their land at one time, because the Lord, the God of Israel, fought for Israel. And Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, to the camp at Gilgal. All right, we got a lot of places on the map here, a lot of areas here. It's worth kind of getting a scope in our minds around what's going on here. So Joshua struck the whole land, starting with the hill country. This would be this hill country of Judea. This is kind of the heartland of the place of Israel here. Into the Negev, that's this area further to the south. From there, the lowlands. Do you remember which part of the map is the lowlands? The coast. Almost. It's right next to the coast. It's this Shelah, however you want to pronounce that. That's the lowlands. Before you get into the hills, it's not the coastal plains, but it's also not the hill country. It's that intermediate space there. And the slopes, that would probably be kind of connected with the space between the lowlands and the hill country itself. Probably not the coastal plain. You remember who lives in the coastal plain? The Philistines. And Israel always has a problem with the Philistines. Picking up again in verse 41, Joshua struck them from Kadesh Barnea as far as Gaza. Where is Kadesh Barnea? That's really far south here. Kadesh Barnea is almost halfway through the wilderness here. And Gaza? Yeah, Gaza is right over here. This is the edge of Philistine territory. So they get this kind of large southern swath of land as they are entering into the promised land here. They get from Kadesh Barnea as far as Gaza, all the hill country of Goshen, or the country of Goshen as far as Gibeon. Goshen is a weird name here. We know it in Egypt. There's a land of Goshen here. It seems that there's a land of Goshen within the promised land.
Goshen's trying to build a battery factory down in Big Rapids.
Different Goshen. But as far as Gibeon, Gibeon is right up here, again, kind of on this borderland between Judah to the south, and then this is roughly where Benjamin is before getting into the northern tribes there. So we've got this picture. Remember, Joshua has entered the promised land right about here. This is the same place Elijah and Elisha happened, the same place that Jesus, John the Baptist happened. They enter the land, they're encamped at Gilgal. They have this one great military campaign, take over a large swath of territory, and by the end of this chapter here, they're back in their camp at Gilgal as they are kind of regrouping, making plans for what is coming next. That was our first 4 verses. And from here, this is where Hazor comes in. So starting in chapter 11, I'll just read the first 5 verses to get us started here. Again, weird name, so I'll take it for you. When Jabin, king of Hazor, heard of this, he sent to Jobab, king of Madon, and to the king of Shimram, and to the king of Akshaph, and to the kings who were in the northern hill country, and in the Arabah south of the Chinnereth, in the lowland, and in Naphdor to the west, to the Canaanites in the east and the west, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites in the hill country, the Hivites under Hermon in the land of Mizpah. They came out with all their troops, a great horde, a number like the sand that is on the seashore, with very many horses and chariots. All these kings joined their forces and came and encamped together at the waters of Merom to fight against Israel. All right. So what's going on? First of all, we've got to ask, what's going on with Hazor? Yeah, Hazor's up here, and they're seeing, all right, what's going on down south? This is big news. If an invading army comes within 100 miles of where you are, you better be aware of what's going on. Especially if one campaign took this chunk of territory away from the peoples that were living there. It says that Joshua devoted these cities along the way to destruction. Chances are there are people that are escaping, and where you're going, if that's the desert, you're going north. So Hazor's hearing all this news. There's this group that's come in, they're taking over. And what's the king of Hazor do?
Sent word to Joab, king of Madon.
Yeah, so he sends word to a whole bunch of other guys. Jobab, king of Madon. There are a lot of these smaller cities that we don't know exactly where they are. I looked up Madon, and there's competing guesses as to where that is. Some believe that it is the same as Merom, which is just to the east of them. There's a couple competing places as to which one is Merom. In any case, is that the same place? Is it somewhere else? We don't really know. The king of Shimram, of Akshaph. Chances are other places further to the north here. However, they go all over the map. The kings who are in the northern hill country. Well, if this is kind of the hill country, the northern hill country is this part of the land here to the north, and what's marked on the map here is Samaria. That would, it seem, be the northern hill country. They go from there in the Arabah south of Chinneroth. What's Chinneroth?
Sea of Galilee.
Yeah. Sometimes, if it's in the Old Testament, the Sea of Galilee is referred to as the Sea of Chinneroth. There's a city here right on the shore of the Sea of Galilee known as Chinneroth. We talked, that was our first lesson about the Arabah. Mostly how we've been talking about it is this part of the Rift Valley to the south of the Dead Sea, but it seems it's the part just south of the Sea of Galilee here. So he's all in this area to the northern part of the map. In the lowlands, again, so we've got the Shelah was the lowlands over here. There's some lowlands that extend further to the north here, closer towards the land of the Carmel Ridge, lower Galilee there as well, could be. They go to the lowlands and in Naphoth Dor on the west. Dor is a city right along the coast here. I can't remember what Naphoth means. It's like the brook or something like that of Dor. In any case, They're gathering all these people in all these places. The Canaanites to the east and the west, the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Jebusites in the hill country, Hivites under Hermon. Here's Mount Hermon, so Hivites are up here. And all the land of Mizpah, and they all come together and gather here at Merom. This is setting up for quite an epic fight.
So when Scripture refers to Canaanites, are they like an ethnic group? Are they a nation, or is that just a term for all these different various cities? And do they have any like culture or anything in common?
Yeah, this is something that scholars still debate. This was just probably 5-6 years ago. They'd done some DNA testing on the bones of people who lived from this time, and they did DNA testing of modern peoples, and there are genetic connections in Israelis and Palestinians today, going back to the same group of people that historically, at least archaeology, they've been calling Canaanites. So people generally who were living in this land, both Jews and non-Jews, have produced peoples today that are still all related to each other, even though they've got their distinct, well, we're the right kind of people, we got the right kind of bloodlines. They both like to say that, and it turns out they both have the same heritage. So broadly speaking, yes, Canaanites, people who live within this land, these specific groups of, the Perizzites, Amorites, Hittites, Jebusites, Hivites here, if we're talking about there being even half a dozen people groups in this land, this is not a huge chunk of territory. There is a lot of overlap and intermixing, and as much as the Bible speaks as if these are very clearly distinguishable groups of people, from our vantage point now, 3,500 years later, it's hard to kind of piece out which culture is which. It just seems very similar to our looking today. Yeah?
So this area is about the same size as New Jersey. This is less two armies going to fight each other, more like a gang fight.
Yeah, it's I would say probably a level up from a gang fight, more like militias going at it. You'll have a militia in an area that gathers together. But yeah, this is a very tribal thing as opposed to full-blown military, pull out our tanks and dig trenches and all that. This is much closer to home here. All right. It's worth noticing who is gathering all this army together. Yeah, this Jabin, king of Hazor. What gives him the authority? Yeah, it seems that Hazor here has some sort of prominence in the area, that he's the guy that all these other people groups at least listen to, will take advice from. Hazor seems to have some sort of political significance in the area. Again, this is very much, we're thinking in terms of city-states as opposed to nations, like we think of today, very much pockets of influence as opposed to specifically defined territories that you govern. People groups are a lot more nebulous. You're a king of a city as opposed to a country. However, there are greater and lesser kings along the way. And it seems that Hazor is specifically this city that has a lot more prominence than some of these others, since this king can call all the others together and make some decisions here. All right. Any other thoughts before we keep moving here? All right. I'm going to skip the part where God acts. We know God acts. God will take care of them. It's great. Joshua, end of verse 9, did to them just as the Lord said. He hamstrung their horses, burned their chariots with fire. All right, Israel wins, yay. Picking up the story at verse 10. Joshua turned back at that time and captured Hazor and struck its king with a sword, for Hazor formerly was the head of all those kingdoms. There we got a little bit of indication for that thought. They struck with a sword all who were in it, devoting them to destruction. There was none left that breathed. And this is Joshua burned Hazor with fire. All the cities of those kings and all their kings Joshua captured, struck them with the edge of the sword, devoting them to destruction, just as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded. But none of the cities that stood on mounds did Israel burn, except Hazor alone. That Joshua burned. All the spoils of these cities and the livestock the people Israel took for their plunder. But every man they struck with the edge of the sword until they destroyed them, and they did not leave any who breathed, just as the Lord had commanded Moses his servant. So Moses commanded Joshua, and so Joshua did. He left nothing undone of all that the Lord had commanded Moses. All right. So they win in battle, and what does Joshua do? Yeah, he wins.
Cleans house.
He cleans house. Yeah. So they take whatever plunder they can. The men die. These are the men of fighting age. We don't want them regrouping and fighting us back. The men are the ones primarily who are in charge of the religion, so we're going to kill that. Not just kill the men, but kill that religion, that worship of other gods. But there's something specific reserved for Hazor. What does Joshua do at Hazor?
He burns the city.
Mm-hmm.
All the buildings down.
Yep. He doesn't do this to any of the other cities. Verse 13, none of the cities that stood on mounds did Israel burn except Hazor alone. Hazor being the head of all these kingdoms, it seems to reserve a greater judgment. There's greater condemnation for this city, this people, this group that were in charge of going after God's people. It's interesting. You go to Israel today, and you can go to Hazor, and Hazor shows a very strange destruction pattern. There's a compound there. It was kind of the capital, kind of ruling governor's house there. It's made out of basalt stone. Basalt is volcanic rock. It's dark, it's black rock. And that volcanic black rock is shattered. Not just, sorry, you got a chunk falling off, but specifically it is shattered. It looks like a piece of broken glass, some of these rocks. And archaeologists tell you it's because this rock was heated up and there's a certain temperature. I can't remember how hot the fire has to be to shatter rocks. It's ridiculously high. And the time period that they think archaeologically that this happens matches up with the Bible.
It's probably the king's house.
Yes, it is. It seems that the archaeological record here matches the biblical record. That is sometimes the case, sometimes not, mostly because archaeologists don't always take all evidence into account. They are still learning. Archaeology as a discipline is really only 150, 200 years old, so we're still learning things as we go. But shocking how specific and how accurate that is. That this kind of rock can only fracture with fire at a certain heat, and here we've got Joshua around the same time going through with fire and burning this very city.
Did the people move into those other cities then because the buildings and everything was still there? Or?
Yeah, it is interesting. He mentions, the cities that stood on mounds, that Israel didn't burn them. Again, I mentioned on Sunday in the sermon that a city, if it's got water, it needs shelter, you access it to food, and easily defendable. Generally speaking, those were mounds. Archaeologically, we call them tells. T-E-L is the, I think it's Arabic maybe. It means mound, hill. And so these spaces you can go and you can kind of see over the course of history. It's not just a smooth kind of dome. It kind of slopes up, it flattens off, and then it slopes down again. And it starts off a regular domed hill, but after each level, it kind of smooth out the surface, flatten everything there, and build on top. So whether they destroyed these cities, just not with fire, and kind of built over, did they just go and inhabit them? There is...
It's like it was set up good for them to move in.
Yeah, exactly. And there is this theme that happens in the Old Testament of when judgment happens, it's you shall build houses but not live in them, plant vineyards but not drink the wine, plant fields but not harvest. But there's also that flip side of you didn't build houses but you're going to live in them. You didn't do the work of plowing, planting, anything like that, and yet you will benefit from that. So chances are there's a lot of the structures that are already there that Israel just goes in and occupies and inhabits.
Talking about the layers and how the mounds get bigger over time is making me think of Chicago.
Yeah.
Which only 50 years since the fire, and it was built up on top of the rubble. And I know there's whole parts, I've seen documentaries where they raised the whole town like 8 or 10 feet.
Yep.
And you can actually go underneath and see the original streets in some places.
Yeah, exactly.
Of all the times I've been there, I've never checked into that, but that would be kind of cool to see.
Yeah.
That's only 150 years.
Yeah.
And here we're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of years, right?
And am I remembering right that after 9/11 they were kind of clearing out the site? They're digging underneath for the memorial stuff there, and they're finding ships that had they were at port, they fell apart, and the city grows and expands, and it just kind of builds on top, and they're finding stuff like that.
They just use any rubble they had to fill in the low places.
Yeah. And so, yes, there's a lot of that still goes on, and yeah, within 100 years, if that, 200 years, there's a rapid change in how cities are laid out. Now, again, a place like Chicago is going to be a much larger scale than any one of these cities. And yet, there is something to that, how rapidly this takes place. Even previous place I lived downstate, every year there was a certain section of our sidewalk we had to dig out because just dust would gather and collect and dirt would wash there from rain. And if we didn't take care of it, there would be inches of dirt and dust and whatnot that had been built up over a year, and we got to constantly clear that out because nature just kind of loves to retake things as well. So some of this is natural, some of this is man-made, but over the course of time, these mounds are very important, and archaeologically, just biblically speaking, there's a lot of connections to the past all in one place, which helps us in a Bible study like this, as we've been essentially doing that archaeology of digging down at a site and seeing what we find. All right, we're just going to look at a very brief text in the book of Judges. Judges chapter 4, the first 3 verses here. We won't read the whole story, but I noticed this and hadn't put too much thought into it until getting ready for this Bible study. Joshua does his conquest, he goes and he passes away, eventually tribes settle in, things are getting more inept, people are doing what they want, and it ends up in trouble. So this is the start of the story of Deborah and Barak. We've got a weird name, I'll take it. The people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord after Ehud died. The Lord sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. The commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Hashereth Hagoyim. The people of Israel cried out to the Lord for help, for he had 900 chariots of iron and oppressed the people of Israel cruelly for 20 years. Anything sound familiar there?
Peter.
That first sentence.
Yeah. Yeah, so first of all, the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord their God. That happens again and again, especially in the book of Judges. They follow this cycle, and God is gracious every time, but they're doing what was evil in the sight of the Lord. We've got this Hazor connection again. And who's in charge in Hazor?
Jabin again.
Jabin again. So again, scholars debate, is this like a family name? That you've got the same, your kid is named the same thing you are. It would be technically the second or third Jabin. It happens later on in the Persian Empire that there are 3 or 4 different Cyruses. We're going to hear tonight about a Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria. He's technically Tiglath-Pileser III, because Tiglath-Pileser is just a great name, and everyone wants to name themselves Tiglath-Pileser. So we got to specify this is the third. So, is it a family name? It could be a title, specifically using the language of whatever these Canaanites are. Jabin, and what is his role here? He's king of Canaan. All right, so again, we're seeing Hazor being this perhaps a little bit more significant of a city up to the north here. It seems to be the center of the Canaanite culture, or at least the kings that are ruling at that time. Hazor is this city of prominence, perhaps even the capital city of this part of the area here. And so we're introduced to this guy, again, Jabin, king of Canaan, but more importantly for this story is the commander of his army, Sisera. And you'll remember the story of Deborah and Barak. Deborah's the judge at the time, judgess, I don't know how you say the female version of judge. Prophetess, the different titles for her here. In any case, she tells Barak, go kill him. Barak says, I can't go unless you go with me. Hold my hand, please. Essentially, he begs for help. She says, all right, I'll go with you, but you're not going to get credit for this victory. And eventually, another woman drives a tent peg into Sisera's temple, and it's quite the ordeal. But it all centers around Hazor. The king of Hazor, the commander of his army, is living in this city, this Harosheth Hagoyim. Let's see if I've got a note on this one. Metal Forge of the Nations. Hagoyim, the nations, the people. This is later on Gentiles. So somewhere in this area there's a metal smithing place, and they're taking advantage of that for their military stuff especially. But Hazor has this significance of one of the places that is the seat of some trouble. How does that work? Wasn't Hazor just destroyed?
We don't know how many years.
They're all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, all kinds of stubborn. They rebuilt. It's what people do.
Germany rebuilt in less than 20 years after World War I.
Yeah, enough to cause a lot more trouble in World War II.
According to the study Bible, they have the dates at the top of the page. This looks like exactly 200 years later.
Yep.
From the Joshua.
We go through biblical history very quickly, and we're next book over, so it can't have been that long. And it turns out, in fact, 200 years. There's a lot that can happen in 200 years. Cadillac didn't exist 200 years ago. There are cities that come and go, and that's just how it happens.
Wait, how the heck would this king be related to the last king if when Joshua invaded the city, they killed everything that breathed?
Yeah.
I assume that would mean that they killed the king and his wife and his kids.
Assuming those relatives stuck around to be killed. I know later on, as we'll hear about David, there's trouble brewing, so he sends some specific people out to go hide, go find a shelter with someone else. Later on, there's one of the kings of, I can't remember if it's Israel or Judah. He's going over and trying to defeat all the family members of the previous king, but there's one kid that escapes, and like they take him into the temple and hide him in the temple for like 15, 20 years. So it is thoroughly possible that it's a relative there that's just been hidden away over the course of years. The other possibility is that a modern king will take the name of an ancient ruler to gain some validity to their rule. Whether or not they're actually related, again, this happens in the Persian Empire. Names Cyrus, Darius is another one that shows up. That, like, well, you really weren't related, but now you're claiming that title, so and we don't have all the birth records sitting out in front for everyone to dig through and find out. So if you're saying that's who you are, well, that's who you are. And so there could be strategic advantages for adopting that name, especially if you've chosen to set up your capital at Hazor, which has a history of being the capital of the Canaanites, kind of the chief king. And, well, who was the best king we had before the downfall? Well, it was Jabin, so let's have another Jabin here. So there's lots of different ways you could look at that and try to understand it.
They did that with Caesar, didn't they?
Yeah. Julius Caesar, Caesar Augustus, Caesar Tiberius. So again, that's probably more of a title than a name, but at the same time, whether it's the same person or just a title, they're claiming supremacy.
King of England changed his last name.
Yeah. Hanover, was it? Yeah.
House of Windsor. I remember it was something else, and I'm looking it up, and it was something German.
Yeah.
And they changed it during World War I.
Yeah.
It's like they took the name that was an older English name to make them blend in better.
Yep. Yeah, there's a deep irony there that the royal house in England is in fact German. Yeah. But that's ancient history.
Would that be green?
That's why.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that a fertile area?
So the green the colors on the map are elevation more than they are greenery.
Okay, well, you got the tan, the browns.
Yep.
And you talked, that's hill country.
Yep.
And then you've got the greens, which I would believe to be a lower altitude or something. And that, I don't know, as to why would that be such a great spot?
Yeah. You've all chosen to sit really far back tonight, so you can't see some of these details. There's an important detail here. There is a red line starting off to the east, going west, and then turning south, running through Hazor, down through the Jezreel Valley, through the pass at Megiddo, along basically as close to the coast as you can get, going south, maybe southwest, splits off into two before joining back together and going down to Egypt.
Trade route.
And the red means international trade route.
Okay.
Hazor is very crucially located at a spot. You've gotten around the Sea of Galilee here. This upper Galilee is really hard to get through. There are some black lines here that are more local trade routes, lines of communication. But really, if you want to go north, this is Damascus would be up here. Syria and Assyria are further to the north there as well. You either go right along the coast, hugging it the entire time, which is sometimes easier said than done, or you follow these passes through the region of Galilee and pass right through Hazor. You can't go much further west because it's mountainous, it's very hilly. You can't go much further east because you've got this swampy area. You've got a little lake up here. It does not exist today. This is Lake Hula. We talked about in our first class that this was the Hula Basin or Hula Valley. Once they started pulling water out of the Sea of Galilee, the Jordan River, even the headwaters of the Jordan up here for use in modern-day Israel. This whole swampy lake area dried out. But in the ancient world, you can't pass through that. It's swamp, and there's really no way around it. So Hazor is at this crossroads. You got to pass through. And if you pass through, we'll charge you along the way. Let alone be able to trade with you, send our goods along this trade route. So Hazor is at a very critical juncture here. All right. So we could talk all day long about what happens with Deborah and Barak and Sisera, but I found that an interesting connection there, that it was the same name at the same place, having essentially the same role that he did during the time of Joshua. Only now it's a couple hundred years later, but history repeats itself, as we've been seeing again and again as we've been looking on the map here. Flip forward, 1 Kings chapter 9. We've passed the time of the judges. We've passed the time of King Saul, King David. Those kingdoms have come and gone. Now we are into Solomon's reign. 1 Kings 9. Still weird names. I guess I'm going to be doing most of the reading tonight. 1 Kings 9, starting at verse 15. This is somewhat a summary of Solomon's work that he's doing. And we're going to hear of some of the places that he builds up using forced labor. It's not a pretty picture, but it's still what Solomon did in his reign. So this is the account of the forced labor that King Solomon drafted to build the house of the Lord and his own house, and the Millo and the wall of Jerusalem, and Hazor and Megiddo and Gezer. Pharaoh, king of Egypt, had gone up and captured Gezer and burned it with fire, and had killed the Canaanites who lived in the city, and had given it as a dowry to his daughter, Solomon's wife. So Solomon rebuilt Gezer, and Lower Beth-horon, and Baalath, and Tamar in the wilderness, and the land of Judah, and all the store cities that Solomon had, and the cities for his chariots, and the cities for his horsemen, and whatever Solomon desired to build in Jerusalem, in Lebanon, and in all the land of his dominion. That's Solomon's building projects. Just a few. So what did we hear Solomon building?
A lot of cities.
A lot of cities. Houses. So he built the house of the Lord, the temple. He built his own house. The Millo. Lots of speculation on this one. Chances are it's some sort of retaining wall, perhaps a building on top of a retaining wall in Jerusalem that connects the Temple Mount itself with some of the lower parts of the city. That's the Millo, likely. He builds the wall of Jerusalem, but he also builds some cities. What cities does he rebuild or build? Hazor. All right, we got Hazor. What's next? We end up in Gezer.
Megiddo.
Next is Megiddo, along the same red line. And where might you expect Gezer to be? And just off the red line. Crucially, though, right off the red line on one of the main routes up to Jerusalem. So he's building, at least at Gezer, this fortified city to help protect his capital. Now, why rebuild or build up Hazor and Megiddo? Money. It's on a trade route. Try to defend those places. It is interesting, again, archaeologically speaking, Hazor, Megiddo, and Gezer all have the same structure of their city gates. It's a pretty unique structure. It's a three-gated gateway. You pass through one gate, there's some chambers, you would pass through another gate, more chambers, before the final gate, and you're into the city. Archaeologists have called these the Solomonic gates. If I'm remembering correctly, Gezer was the last city to be excavated that they found these Solomonic gates. And the story I heard was that the folks that excavated that, they, first thing in the morning, dug them up, walked through them here, drove up to, walked through the Solomonic gates there, and went up to Hazor and walked through the gates. So they would be the first person in history to walk through all 3 gates on the single day. Because otherwise it would have taken multiple days to do that. Again, that seems pretty silly to me, but at the same time, we've got this connection here in the text. We've got this connection, archaeologically speaking, that these gates are built at the same time, in the same style, in the same unique way.
I think it would have been kind of thrilling.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah. To me, it sounds like something that college kids would do. I'm going to be the first to get to do this. And they're, fueled on caffeine and whatever else. I bet no one else has done that. Let's do it. Kind of a drop of the hat sort of thing. It is what it is. These are the 3 cities, at least initially listed. Then there's that kind of parenthetical comment about why Gezer needs to be built. Where is Lower Beth Horon?
Close to Upper Beth Horon.
Yeah, well, it's very true. Upper Beth Horon is here higher in elevation than Lower Beth Horon, a little further to the west, a little bit lower down. Again, on one of the main roads from that international highway up to Jerusalem here. This is a place that you can better defend your capital from. Baaloth is again somewhere up in this whole mess of cities here. Let's see if I can remember and find where that is. I'm not seeing it right offhand. Tamar is in the wilderness, way far to the south here. Again, you've got a red line here. This is what connects Egypt down to the west, over to the west. And there's another highway that runs along north to south here across the Jordan. Again, an important outpost if you're thinking of defending your capital city here in Jerusalem. You can kind of spread out all directions. It's on a trade route, so you get some money that way as well. In the land of Judah, all the store cities that Solomon had, the cities for chariots, the cities for his horsemen, and whatever else he decided to build in Jerusalem, up in Lebanon, he just kind of takes over and does a whole bunch of building. The last 50, 100 years in archaeological circles, there's some that will claim that David and Solomon's kingdom never really existed. We just don't have the archaeological evidence for it. Well, we're finding that evidence today, and more often we're seeing a lot of little outposts out in the wilderness here that would have been a city for horses and charioteers and all of these the guard stations from this time period that are again showing that there's pretty strong, solid activity going on here.
So, Solomon's kingdom was kind of the largest and most powerful that Israel ever was, right?
Yes.
Did he actually conquer all of the promised land? Because I remember previously in the Old Testament, they never quite finished the job, right?
Right.
Did Solomon get all the land that God had designed for them, or did he leave some out too?
With both David and Solomon, David conquers using military means. Solomon conquers using treaties. So one of his downfalls here, it's just a couple chapters later, Solomon ends up having 1,000 wives. 700 of those wives are princesses. There are your political treaties that, sure, I haven't completely taken over, I haven't wiped out your people, your gods, but we're at peace. You're not going to attack me because I married your daughter, and you want to keep your daughter safe. And I won't attack you because I want my wife to be happy. And she's not going to be happy if I go after her dad. And so there is a strategy to this. Like I said, it ends up being Solomon's downfall. He, after describing he's married all of these wives, he worships all of their gods, it says. And then there's this phrase, Solomon clung to these in love. And there's some ambiguity in the Hebrew text. Is he clinging to his wives in love, or their gods in love? As if his heart is not wholly true to the Lord his God, as David's was. And so, Solomon does take over a lot of territory. It's probably more of, hey, I'll get taxes from you. You can still do whatever you want, but more of kind of a puppet kingdom along the way.
God had ordered them to conquer it, though, right? So
God had ordered, yes, yeah. But they never. It is, yes. They never really conquer the Philistines. Even Egypt, for a number of years, tries to conquer the Philistines, and they can't do it. This is the Egyptians. You'd think if anyone can do it, the Egyptians can. They have trouble. But really, when it comes time to do any major conquering, it's from the outside. Assyria, Syria, Babylon, Persia, and eventually on from there, the Greeks and the Romans. But Israel kind of falls flat on that territory taking.
Where is the Ark of the Covenant?
So at this point in history, if we're in 1 Kings, the Ark of the Covenant is here in Jerusalem. Solomon builds the house for the Lord here, ends up in Jerusalem. Before then, it bounces around. After they enter the Promised Land, it seems for a while it's here in Gilgal. As they just get across the Jordan, they get settled. But once they are firmly in the Promised Land, the Ark of the Covenant ends up for a while at the city of Shiloh, here in the hill country of Ephraim. I think in the book of Judges, that's where you've got the priest passing through and this guy making his own household gods, and it's that mess. But Shiloh's right there. That's where the Ark of the Covenant had been. They lose it in battle at one point. They're fighting with the Philistines, and it travels down and bounces around from different cities. I'm trying to remember what city it ends up in. But it's one of the cities of the Shelah. The Philistines put the Ark of the Covenant on a cart, kind of send it off, and, well, if it comes back, we're in trouble, but if it goes, we know we're safe. So eventually it hangs out here before David gets it back. He kind of holds on to it before getting into Jerusalem when Solomon has built the temple. Where is it today? Realistically, probably melted down into random gold of the Babylonian Empire. Yeah. What was that? Or in a government warehouse, yes. Yeah. After killing a whole bunch of Nazis, yeah. No, again, practically speaking, that's likely what happened. There are a few different times that invading armies come, and in order to save themselves, the people of Judea down in the south, the kingdom of Judah, they say, hey, here's our temple treasury, take whatever you want. Oh, we've got all this gold on the temple. Feel free to strip that off and take that for yourself. And to save their own skin, chances are the Ark of the Covenant goes to. It is interesting, when Jerusalem falls in 70 AD, is that Titus that comes and conquers? In any case, there's a monument in Rome of depicting him bringing back some of the temple treasures to Rome, and there's no Ark of the Covenant. There's a menorah, a 7-branch candlestick. There's a few other temple accoutrements, but no Ark of the Covenant. So it seems at that point in history that it's gone. So where along the way, we really just don't know. All right. So Solomon builds up these places. This, again, shows Solomon's political acumen, building up very strategic places for defense, making these political arrangements through marriage. Solomon is very wise politically, not very wise theologically. Well, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, wise theologically. He doesn't live it out very well. Let's just put it like that. He's worshiping these other gods that his wives bring in, and it is a mess. All right, last but not least, we'll look at one more text tonight. I know we're getting short on time. So 1 Kings 15, verses 27 to 31. I'm looking at it again, more weird names. So you get off the hook for doing any readings tonight. At least I'm not going to be mean to you like that. So, 2 Kings 15. Oh, yeah, sorry, did I say 1 Kings? My apologies. 2 Kings 15. 2 Kings 15, I'll start at verse 27. This is in the 52nd year of Azariah, king of Judah. Pekah, the son of Remaliah, began to reign over Israel in Samaria. He reigned 20 years. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. So in the days of Pekah, king of Israel, here's our favorite guy, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came and captured Ion, Abel, Beth-Makkah, Genoa, Kadesh, Hazor, Gilead, and Galilee, all the land of Naphtali, and he carried the people captive to Assyria. And Hoshea, the son of Elah, made a conspiracy against Pekah, the son of Remaliah, and struck him down, put him to death, and reigned in his place in the 20th year of Jotham, son of Uzziah. And we've got the rest of his acts written in Chronicles there. Very short account, but we get a decent amount of history there. So what's happened? You got this Pekah. He's the second to last king of the northern tribes of Israel. So the kingdom splits. They both have lots of kings, but he's the second to last. Things are going downhill very quickly in Israel. Does what is evil in the sight of the Lord, as all the northern kings do. And one of the ways that God takes care of it starts to chip away at the territory of Israel. So he sends this guy, Tiglath-Pileser III, king of Assyria. I had a professor at seminary that instead of saying Tiglath-Pileser III every time, he just abbreviated it TP3. It is easier to say. But Tiglath-Pileser III is fun to say too. I will say that. In any case, he captures all these cities that are all to the north here. Let's see if I can find Ion real quick here. I think it's off the map to the north here. In any case, captures that guy. Abel, Beth-Makkah, just one of the northernmost cities on the map here. From there, Genoa. Let's see, where is Genoa? Genoa is Ephraim, so 184. So Genoa is here, a little bit closer to the coast. Kadesh, here, again closer to that main road. Hazor, this is the land of Gilead then. Galilee, all the land of Naphtali. And he carried the people captives to Assyria. So he really takes the top of the northern kingdom of Israel away into exile. This is the start of that process as the northern kingdom is falling. God is once again bringing judgment on Israel because of their sins. Because he does what is evil in the eyes of the Lord, not departing from the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel to sin. What was the sin of Jeroboam, son of Nebat?
Worship other gods.
What gods in particular? Jeroboam was the first king of the northern tribes, northern 10 tribes, the tribes of Israel. He set up 2 idols, one at Dan, one at Bethel.
The golden calves.
Golden calves. These are your gods that brought you out of the land of Egypt. So this second to last king does the same thing. He doesn't leave them behind, doesn't take them down. And so Dan, while not mentioned here, is part of this territory that Israel loses. You think that's your God? He can't stand up. Even the false pseudo-Israelite God is taken away. He loses. We see in Hazor here the city that's very important, it seems. Important as the people of Israel are entering the land. It's an important Canaanite city. Solomon recognizes its strategic importance as well. But as important as it is, as strategic and as mighty a city as it is, when God decides it's time to judge, it goes. And that's the end of the story. That's all we get of Hazor. We again get another Hazor talked about a little bit later on, the Hazor that's here in the area of Benjamin. New Testament comes around, Hazor isn't on the map anymore. It's not really important, not really a big deal. Hazor kind of outlives its importance.
But it's still there today, you said.
Yeah, the ruins of it. Yeah.
Oh, it's not really a
It's not really a city that people live in today. Nope. Yeah. If only. Any last minute thoughts or questions on Hazor or anything we talked about tonight? I put a lot of sticky notes up there tonight, apparently.
Ruins.
Yeah, just ruins.
Was that rock, was it so hard though to deal with, like you couldn't have made your temple out of it or anything?
You could. You can chip it and hack away at it to shape it. It's a volcanic rock, and oddly enough, a lot of volcanic activity around here. The reason that this Rift Valley is so low is that it's between tectonic plates. And so historically there has been some volcanic activity there, and the results of that here. It's a local rock, and in the ancient world you use the rock you got. So it's basalt and limestone are the two main rocks that they use. It is kind of interesting. Basalt is all black, and limestone is almost all white. So you can just visually see what they used as they're building along the way there.
What was that area we went with new shells a lot in the Greek somewhere?
Yeah.
Used shells.
You just use what you have.
Yeah. The Olympic area was.
Yeah.
Used a lot of shells and just packed them together.
Yep.
Somehow, like concrete. They're pretty sturdy though.
Yeah.
I don't know what they used to hold them all together, but something.
Yeah. Some sort of concrete based on coral, I believe. You mash that up and mix it with the right substances, and it's.
They're by water.
Yep.
All that stuff.
Again, you use what you have on hand. All right. I think that's probably good enough. We don't want the choir to get mad at us, so let's wrap up with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.